Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Sisto Says, powered by Design 2147, a New York City building and code consulting firm in New York City. Today, I have the privilege of having Brian Loughlin of M.A.P, principal.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. So Brian, our history with M.A.P goes back a long time. Design's been around since 1987. So we're approaching our 39th year, and we've worked with your firm forever.
Yeah.
In some capacity, sometimes on a lot of the work we've done together was cultural buildings, a lot of affordable, 100% affordable, and mixed market rate with some affordable. We've done some education buildings, so we've done a realm of projects. But I asked you to come in today because as always, we're in a housing crisis in New York City.
Yeah.
And this morning, now that we're shooting the show, this morning I was at the New York Building Congress to get the annual midsummer update. And obviously, the biggest thing that they talk about every year is about the housing shortage. They're saying 500,000 apartments, and we have the city of yes. And I wanted you to come in today to talk about, for us, that it's not as easy as it sounds.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely true. And the one thing I would say, to kind of start off, that is, I don't want us to take for granted, is the fact that so many people, like the folks at the conference that you were just at, recognize that we're in a housing crisis. And like a lot of crises that affect New York City and other cities, everyone starts to really take notice when it moves out of just low-income neighborhoods, right? So you think about when fire codes got introduced, it was because middle-income neighborhoods started burning down, not the low-income ones. You same with building codes, same with zoning codes.
And it's unfortunate, and it's not a coincidence that you brought that up, because today, one of the guest speakers said, this isn't a New York City issue. Right. This is a national issue. Yeah. There is a housing crisis everywhere. Right. And it's not just the big city, right? It's not just New York, Chicago, LA, Miami. It's everywhere.
Right. And it's not just low-income neighborhoods. It's not just low-income households. It's across the board.
Across the board.
Except for the luxury condo market, which I think will be fine.
Right.
Everybody else.
That's always fine all the time.
Right. So that everyone is recognizing that we have a housing crisis, I think, is the first step. And I think it's a really good step. Because it means that people's attention on it and people care. I mean, you don't have to go too far back in national politics, and nobody was talking about housing.
Correct.
Now everybody's talking about housing.
Correct.
So that part of it is good, and we should take advantage. Don't let a good crisis go to waste.
Correct. And I think that one of the points that they made today was the supply and demand. When there's no supply, the cost is through the roof.
Yes.
Yeah. Forget New York City. I live in Stamford, Connecticut, and I sold our home that we raised our kids, and we downsized. And we're like, oh, this is great. We're going to get out of the high market. Right. We went to look for a small home, a one-story ranch with a couple of bedrooms. Was crazy numbers, and people were fighting over it because there's no supply. So when you take that and you exponentially move it into New York City, where there's millions of people and there is no apartments available, the cost is astronomical.
Right. Yeah. And the speculative real estate market in New York City is unlike anywhere else. And you have almost a city of infinite demand, right? And it's not just the folks that live here. People are coming in droves every single day.
Every day.
And people in foreign countries are investing in apartments here. And so that makes in Stamford, Connecticut, it's a little bit easier to say, okay, here's the demand, we need to up the supply. In New York City, every time you up the supply, the demand just goes up faster.
Right, because there's more availability, so more people flock to it.
Right. So I think that's a huge challenge, and you've seen the number, the estimates as to how many housing units are we short?
Yeah, today they talked about 500,000.
Yeah. So our RPA, the Regional Planning Association, put out a study last year.
Yeah, they talked about RPA today.
Oh, yeah? Is that right?
Yeah.
So
Carlos spoke about it.
They've been saying 540,000 is about what we're short. And they also have drawn reference to the current production rate that we're at right now is just going to exacerbate that problem. And in the next 10 years, that might even double, unless we start to change production rates back to somewhere in the ballpark of what we did at the end of World War II. So if you think about what the housing production in New York City was at that period, that's kind of what we need to be thinking about.
So that's a great point. So it's gonna segue into what we're going to talk about. So they talked about. So we've been around for the 421A. We've been around for the 485X now, right? And every one of those programs partnered with private developers.
Yeah.
If you want to build in New York City, government and private developers, when it works for both sides, it really, really works.
Yeah.
And when it doesn't work, it halts it. So we lost the 421A for a year and a half or 2 years. We were at 250,000 short. It propels us to 500,000, and yet we're still getting more and more people coming to New York City.
Yeah.
So part of the crisis was you took away the initiative for almost 2.5 years.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
So at least you were getting 20%, 30%, maybe 50-50, right? Market, and you took it all away. So then even today when they spoke about it, the 485X is in place. So you're an architect, you're a planner, you deal with developers. You know how many buildings we've been getting? We used to do 7-8 proposals a month for new buildings from private developers. The land is so hard to get right now that those developers have left New York City, number one. Number two is even the ones that we looked at, right, Brian? When they get to 99 units, the 485 doesn't pencil out. Yeah. So now the law is stuck there. If they want to, and I'm not trying to be a politician in any way, shape, or form, I'm just giving facts that your office, other offices have come to us and saying, hey, all the developers want to cut up the zoning lot and build 2 towers that are less than 100 units.
Yeah.
So there's definitely a problem with it at 100 units. The city may not change this, or the state may not change it because it comes from the state. It could take them years to change it. So you're going to lose another 3 or 4 years where maybe you could have added on every development a whole bunch more units, but the incentive wasn't there for them to build over those units.
So just to add a little dimension to what you're talking about, the problem is once you go to 100 units, then you're effectively prevailing wage, right? You're up at
well, it's not only prevailing wage, but it's also prevailing wage to maintain the building, correct?
Sure.
And that throws,
your
throws
porters,
in a level.
Your doormen, they all
fall into that category.
Yeah.
So now it's not only what you did in construction, it's for the lifetime of the building.
The operation of the building.
It's it, right.
Sure. And just to be clear, I used to be in a union. I'm definitely a pro-union guy.
I'm not against the unions. The unions have every right to do what they do. They're an active part of the fabric of New York City and the country.
Right.
You can't just cut them out.
I think no, absolutely. And I think one of the things that there's a lot of things that have come down. We were talking a little bit earlier about the changes to refrigerant, and I don't think everyone anticipated what a set of dominoes that was going to set off. Same with SWIP, and I'm sure you guys have talked about SWIP. That is just really gummed up the works on a lot of stuff. So this 485X is creating challenges where we didn't have those challenges before.
When we did the 421As.
Right. And so and if you look at so in affordable housing, when we do 100% affordable for seniors, that will typically trigger prevailing wage as well.
Correct.
But it's usually coupled with the funding mechanism of project-based vouchers.
So there we go again.
Yeah.
That we talk about partnerships, right? So we've done a bunch of senior houses which was, I think, an incredible program that NYCHA realized they had so much zoning left over. We've done a few on the NYCHA properties. And one of the things that what happens in our projects in affordable, just to give it, we'll use an example of affordable, and we're going to talk about pre-development because I think that's really the essence of it. I love doing 100% affordable. I do. I had other architects here because I think that we get a feeling of when we complete those projects and we get to go back and we get to the final CO and we get to meet the people that live there, that work in the community facility on the first floor, and we get this whole outreach. There's a sense of accomplishment that we did this for a good reason. And I think that sometimes should really be part of why we do what we do in our life.
Makes it easier to get out of bed in the morning, doesn't it?
Exactly. And what frustrates me with it, Brian, is that we'll file our plans, we'll get a review, and kudos to the building department. They got a lot going on. It's not an easy division in this city to find people to get through the process of entitlement. But we could get through 90% of it. And there's 1%, whether it's the street tree person who can't give us the permit, or it's somebody at DEP, or it's somebody, who's looking at our storm water while we're in construction. And there's one piece of that process, of that entitlement, that hangs us up for months. And that's where I say to myself, why can't there be, and I'm not trying to solve the city's problems, but when it's 100% affordable, and these families or these seniors or anybody, we've done shelters for battered women with their children. There has to be a way that the process and this regulatory stuff gets fast-tracked. To me, it's not the same, and I'm not taking anything away from developers because they should be able to develop and build and be for profit. But most of these sponsors are not-for-profits.
A lot of them are,
and they're stuck. They're stuck. We can't get at it. We get a set of plans from M.A.P. We should be able in a couple of months go from point A to point B, get them in the ground, get them, because their approval and their permit is part of the funding. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, is that whole process for building 100% affordable with grants, with federal money, with state money, with sponsors, is not the same as a private investor going to J.P. Morgan and saying, give me $30 million, I want to build a building.
Sure.
So take us through that process.
So I think that often we'll refer to that as the pre-development process. It's when you found a site, you feel like the site's viable, and then you start to churn the wheels, right? And I think the biggest bifurcation in that process is whether you have a city-owned site or you have a privately owned site.
Right.
The biggest challenge we've found, especially when we're working with nonprofits and their development teams, is they have to do their due diligence just like everybody else. Right. And they try and get a commitment letter so that they can lock up site control. But because their limitations are, of cash flow and that sort of thing, and their ability to take on risk are that much more severe than a private for-profit
because
company.
a for-profit person may say, okay, well, we'll just overpay by $1 million, but we'll get the site.
Right.
Where their budget is so tight that that commitment from whoever it is, a city piece of land or a private, they don't have the same negotiating power as the other person.
Right. And one of the benefits they do have is that they usually have a really strong presence in a community.
Exactly.
Like a Camber, like a FACT, like a Wishfish. But the trade-off for that is they usually have a pretty tight catchment area, right? So FACT is working predominantly in Brooklyn.
Right.
Wishfish is working predominantly on the west side and up in the Bronx.
Right.
So there, the sites are fewer because you've limited
Well, right,
limited
because you're
your
not looking
catchment.
at the whole 5 boroughs. You're looking at a small community where
Sure.
you have that presence and you have the availability to
Right.
try to continue to accumulate sites to build affordable housing.
Right. Whereas, so there, your portfolio, your options are a lot less. Your portfolio is therefore going to be a lot smaller.
Sure.
And you're kind of like going all in,
Right.
And whereas, not to pick on the big guys, but L&M, if this site doesn't
Right.
work out, I'll
Yeah,
go
we'll
over
just go
there.
back. Well,
We'll go to Buffalo. We'll look at
course.
Chicago.
Right.
So that already sets up a playing field that's
Uneven.
uneven, I think is the fairest way to say that. And they're not able to move as quickly. And so a lot of privately owned sites, the people that own those sites are like, yeah, we'd love to see affordable housing here, but that guy is going to, one, pay more, and two,
He's
got
gonna do it
90
next
days.
week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
90 days due diligence, and I'm out. Whereas you're telling me, well, I need 90 days due diligence, and then I need to get ULURP, then I need to get city funding, and that could take 3 to 5 years.
Right.
No one's going to sell that.
Right. And I do go to a lot of networking events and listen to a lot of guest speakers. And I'm always very intrigued by the affordable housing when they come up there. And most of the speakers are so honest about it that when people leave, there's like chitter chatter on the way out going, I didn't realize that they're at such a disadvantage.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not, I don't mean to laugh about it. I mean that they can't realize how difficult this process is. So, working with your office, Sung Kim worked at M.A.P for a long time,
Yes.
and he worked for us, and he's a dear friend, and we've always talked zoning. And he would say to me, he goes, Sisto, it's like, hurry up 110 miles an hour, and then it falls off the cliff for months.
Yeah.
Because they are at this disadvantage, like you said. Just getting the site and the procurement of the site, where someone says, "Okay, you want 10 million? Here's your 10 million. We'll do the phase 1 and 2. We'll close in 10. We'll close in 10 days. We'll close in 20 days."
Yeah. No, it's a very difficult real estate market environment for nonprofits to work in, and frankly for profits. We do work with a lot of for profits that do affordable housing development. And
But they're not all the big top guns.
Yeah.
Some of them are smaller, development.
Yes, no,
They're not building 150 units. They may only build 20 or 30.
Yes, yeah, and we often say that they're only nonprofit or they're only for profit on their tax returns,
Right.
but they act very much
Like a
and have a cash flow like a nonprofit.
Sure.
And again, it goes back to what we were saying about it makes it easier to get up in the morning. There is a mission driven aspect.
So there's the
this work.
philanthropist side of some
Sure.
of these people, absolutely, and developers as well. So here we go. We have a sponsor. I'll say a sponsor, right? Is that the right word?
Yeah.
So you have a sponsor. They're looking at a site. M.A.P goes in and says, "Okay, we think we could get you a community facility on the first floor to support the residents. We could do this on the second floor, and then above that, we can get some residents." And you look at it, and you do your zoning, you do everything, and then you realize, ooh, this site doesn't really fit this, right? So now you got to go to ULURP. You may have to go to BSA. You may have to change it. Well, that adds another layer, right? Because now they found the site. The money works, but now they got a different process to do because it's not as of right. And yet the community wants it. The community needs it. Down the line, you're going to get to Dan at CPC or BSA, and someone's going to approve it. But now we have this other delay.
The runway, is often
The runway gets long.
Yeah, no, and it kills them because the period before the financial closing, there's no cash flow coming in to the developer, to the sponsor. And often, especially when we're working with nonprofits, we'll work with them on that. So we'll often defer a good portion of our fee, as do most of the other people that do the
Well,
work we
us
do.
included, because
Yeah.
if we work for you and we work for your competitors, a lot of jobs we have right now. I have 20 buildings that are part of like NYC through a program.
Right.
2 different architects, right? We're doing one half for one half for the other. New buildings out of the ground. We've been on them for 4 years. We haven't seen a penny. We're supposed to close in September. COVID and the big killer was HPD approval.
Yeah.
Very difficult. They're overwhelmed. They don't have the staff to review all these jobs.
Yes. Yeah.
So if
And
if
they
M.A.P is putting in a bunch of units,
Right.
you talk about thousands of units, they got to review every one of them and they got to sign off on it before we could get through a lot of the pieces that we need to get the approval.
Yeah.
And without the approval, we can't. Your team and your client can't get you can't get funded.
Right. And there's a staffing problem, but then there's also a funding problem at HPD, which is a bit of a tangent.
2 different pieces.
Yeah, but so there's almost a there's almost a benefit to the review process at HPD slowing down, because otherwise all these projects will have been approved and are just sitting waiting for funding. So
From the other half.
yeah. So if you're waiting for approvals and then you're waiting for funding, it's like being in the doctor's
Should
office.
be the other way around. You get
it's
the funding
We're going to
first.
start you here, and then we're going to have you talk to the nurse, and then we're going to go over here, and then 3 hours later you see the doctor, and you don't even notice. So I think that the amount of funding subsidy that's available at both HPD and HDC really needs to be increased, because there's a ton of good projects in our office, your office, all of our competitors' offices that are pretty close to ready to go. And so if we could get the funding at HPD, HDC, and the tax credits, et cetera, behind those, then I think you would start to see a lot of that backlog in the pipeline free itself up, and we would start to really see the needle move on some of the availability of affordable housing.
And I think it's not just. I think it's a social need as well.
Completely.
It's not just about building the building. It's that a lot of these people are displaced for long times. They can't.
Yeah.
They can't get a place to live and raise their family and bring their kids to school. It's it takes a really select group to do this stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's why within the affordable world, there's a tight knit of the architects and the contractors and the subcontractors, because they have that part of it that says, I'm willing to do a lot of this without getting paid for a long time, because I know it's the right thing, and eventually we will get paid, but we're willing to make that investment. And not everybody in the business world, agrees with that.
No, I think that's absolutely true. And I think part of it is, we're very much partners. While we might not be official partners, but we're very much partners in that development process. The other thing too, though, and I think this is, I've been an architect for more than a while. This particular community, though, the affordable housing community nationally, but most especially, I think, in New York City, there is definitely a rising tide lifts all ships attitude. If we see somebody else do something, another architecture firm push on good design, or they're able to get, a particular amenity incorporated into a project,
because I think it's very incestuous that everyone speaks to each other in that world.
Right. It goes back to what you were saying about the chatter, on the way out. The affordable housing community is very big on helping each other, because it
creates
raises
success
the bar
for everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
It creates success for everybody.
And I think you're right. It does take a special kind of person that's willing to, embrace that.
Well, you have to, because you don't look. I've been doing Bruno Frastacci's work for a very, very long time. We've been there expedited. We get all of their final C of those, and I get the privilege, because I'm personal friends with Anthony, is that I get to walk the sites.
Yeah.
And the product that they turn out, regardless if M.A.P's the architect or anyone else is the architect, for the cost and the quality that I see, I am amazed.
Yeah.
I am amazed, because we walk a lot of high-end buildings where people are selling units for crazy dollars.
Right.
And then we look and say, look at this path. Look at this product that they're going to give someone in the near future, whether it's in the Bronx or Queens or Brooklyn or Manhattan, wherever it is. You could go down the street and say, oh my God, look at this. This is abandoned cars underneath the bridge over here. And then you turn around and look at this thing. It's like an oasis. And there's a lot to be said that as the sponsor, as the architect, as the contractors, that they can build these gems in the middle of some of these places that haven't had this kind of momentum in a long time.
Right. So I know you guys worked on the project in Brownsville.
Yeah.
That they just wrapped up, which was one of our buildings. That's a really special project. Xenolith Partners.
Yeah, that's East New York, I think. East New York Avenue, 1536.
Yeah. We call it The Rise.
The Rise, yeah.
And it was actually just published in a book we did some work on. But that project.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah. That project, we paid a lot of attention with the entire team, including Anthony and Bruno, to the needs of the community. So it wasn't just the building, and it wasn't just the folks that lived in the building, but used it as an opportunity to see, okay, what's missing from this block? What's missing from this, stretch
You're not
of
just
blocks?
building a piece of architecture, you're building something that the whole community, and that's something that I think, because we're in it, we know it. But someone else who's building a market rate building is only thinking about their building, their amenities for their tenants or their condo, right? But yet, when we build a community or we're filing a community facility or an affordable, there's always a component where we have community facility space. And as code consultants, as expediters, right, we ask the question, well, who's going to use it? Are you using it for more than 75 people? Is it a PA? Why'd you put it on the second floor?
Right.
You may need another stair. Is it shared? The complexity of that little component.
Right.
But
3,000 square feet. The ripple effect of that.
The ripple effect, but the social effect of it, that other people within are going to come there for counseling, maybe they can't get an apartment in that building, but they have an office set up to help them find an apartment somewhere else. Their children need help. It's not just a building. That's what I love about it. That's to me, that's the best part about it.
So one of the things that's interesting about that particular project was it was part of the Vital Brooklyn program that came out of HCR and came out of the state. So there was a privately owned site, a publicly owned site, and was awarded through RFP, through a request for proposals.
Right.
So
And they're not easy.
No.
And there's a lot of competition.
A ton. But that's maybe not a bad thing.
No.
Because you
get to weigh what people want to do with the site.
Right. And
everybody has a different vision.
Right. And I used to be on the public side of things, and one of my jobs was to review the RFPs. It gives you a multiple points of comparison. So you're like, that's a good idea, but they did a little bit better, but we really like this one. So
everyone, like I said before, not to repeat myself, everybody has a different vision.
Yeah.
But they have to have that primary goal as part of the RFP. And it's amazing how each group looks at it in a different way based on what they think the community needs.
Right. But the thing that made that project in some ways feasible was that they automatically had site control because it was a public site.
Right.
So they didn't have to worry about the site owner saying, TikTok, you guys are through your due
You win the RFP, you're good to go.
Yeah.
Let's sign it up. Let's figure it out.
So I do think the way that the city and the state have handled and used RFPs is.
Do you think that's a great question as we wrap up, because I think that's really a great question that I would like to ask you. Andrew Peters, good friend of mine, Curry and Brown, at the end of every show, I've made it part of my show to ask a question about predicting the future. And he always said that in his business, he's a cost estimator. He has to look in the rearview mirror and then project what something is going to cost. And in today's market, with tariffs, with pipeline, with availability of product. I mean, it's very, very difficult. So he has to really take a lot of historical data and take his vision and say, hey, by the way, Brian, if you're going to be building 100% affordable, it's going to cost you $700 a square foot. And you're going to go, $700 a square foot? But that's his job, right?
Yeah.
So that's what he does. He's a professional at it. So you being a professional, I would say, in the affordable world and the market rate world, would you predict that the city will be putting out a lot more RFPs, or do you think it's going to be a lot less for these sites available to these non-for-profits and 100% affordable sites?
So, great question. We're in a point of flux right now. November is coming up.
What's happening in November?
There might be an election.
Oh, okay.
And so it is interesting how housing has, especially through the Bloomberg administrations, de Blasio administrations, and the current Adams administration, each one of those administrations have put their fingerprints on the housing market.
Because it's like you said, it's a national topic now.
Yes.
It's not just New York City.
And what is the city's role in providing housing that's affordable to the people that live in it, right? Mm-hmm. And some people think how they look at affordability. So the current administration only has a little bit of time left,
right,
until they get either reelected or they go off into the sunset.
And just if I could interject one thing, by the way, I think Eric Adams did, and his entire administration with the city of Yes for all three parts of it is an amazing undertaking.
Absolutely.
And it's a shame that I hope that if he is reelected or he's not, that his legacy is that he took on this zoning that hasn't been changed since 1961.
Yeah.
It is an amazing feat.
Really, really impressive. And I also would like to give a tremendous amount of credit to city planning.
100%.
Who have been working on this.
Dan's been great.
For a while. And you have to give credit to city council. Our office actually worked directly with the American Institute of Architects Housing Committee. We worked with the Land Use Council for City Council.
I mean, this is made up of thousands of people that made this happen. This isn't just
right.
But his vision to create this city of Yes is going to. We will see it for generations.
Absolutely, and I think at the core of that. Which started back as a campaign platform for him, was how do we start to streamline some of this process, which goes back to one of your questions.
To the RFPs.
Yeah, it's like, okay, so you're providing affordable housing to seniors in this particular neighborhood. How do we speed that up so that we can alleviate
so
some
that
of this
it doesn't
burden?
take. If you started in one administration, but you can't put a shovel in the ground to the next administration, that's a problem.
Yeah.
That's a problem. That's 4 years later, 3 years later. That's so. Again, we used to see a lot of sites that developers would come to us. I mean, there was one up in the Bronx recently for the old Armory. I mean, they put that RFP out. I think I've seen it twice already. I think it's the third. Yeah, the one where they wanted to do the. I was on. We were on the one with the hockey rink,
and then it was a shopping mall,
right? And did. Again, so there are some sites that are so difficult that even the developers can't figure it out. That's very so. So, do you think we're going to see maybe some smaller RFPs that these non-for-profits are going to have access to help them get?
Well, I do think and it's this administration and the folks at HPD have done a really nice job of putting out smaller sites. There's one right now for East 5th Street in the Lower East Side, which is only going to be about 100 units.
Well, 100 units are 100 units.
That's 100 units.
For someone who doesn't have an apartment, 100 units is a lot.
It's better than zero.
Right.
Yeah. But that's a small developer. That's a small architecture firm. It really helps build capacity.
Sure.
At the same time, Hunters Point South is on the street. And that's probably a 900 to 1,000 unit project,
huge.
Which is really going to, well, not that, the big developers of the world need help building capacity, but it does generate and you know that 1,000 units does make an impact.
But so we talk about the sweet spot for these non-for-profits. Is 100 units the sweet spot? Because we know 1,000 units probably isn't the sweet spot for them.
Not for them.
Right.
But
they're more in the 200, 220 range.
And I think we've seen that number come up
in
the last couple of years.
Yeah, we have to.
And I think part of it is we did a project in the High Bridge neighborhood. That's probably it's a couple of different funding sources, and at the end of the project, it will be somewhere around 400 units. We have another one over near Cooper Park in the Bronx. That's another 400 to 500 units. We have a string of sites.
So you think they're getting bigger?
So I think they're getting bigger, and I think they're getting bigger even though it takes more political will. It definitely takes more subsidy and capital. It takes not just a big developer, but in many cases a team of developers. But the effort that is put into
it's the same.
It's the same.
I was just about to say that to you because a developer friend of mine who does strictly, market rate and affordable here he built 6 or 7 towers here in Brooklyn and Queens, and then after the 421 expired, he went back to Long Island. But he still owns some sites here, and he hasn't developed them yet. He's building some other projects, and he said the effort to build a 200-unit building in New York City or building a 300-unit building is exactly the same.
Yeah.
He goes, because once we get out of the foundation and we get through the problems of the licensing and the SOE and the underpinning and all of those other things, once we're out of it and we're in the superstructure, it's just dollars. It's not really complexity,
right?
Which is different. You know, when you go from 50 units and you never did 200, it's a big jump.
It is, but I do think, going back to your question about the sweet spot, it is somewhere. I think it's now in that 200 to 250 range.
Yeah, and that's what we've been seeing too.
Yeah, and then to answer the other question about are we going to see a lot of RFPs, I think you're going to see a lot come out between now and the end of the year. And depending on whether it's the same administration in a second term or a new administration, I think it's going to take a little while, and it usually does. We used to joke in the public sector, it takes a while for them to find the bathroom.
Right.
You know, it's like they're not even sure, if their health care coverage is the same, So it does take a little bit to get up to speed.
Yeah, and I think that one of the downfalls, especially for our world as architects, as engineers, as consultants, perfect example is the MDL. The multiple dwelling law needs to be updated.
Yes.
But that comes from the state.
Yeah.
So we implemented all these new changes. The governor stays, puts it on the list, says we need to look at this.
Yep.
Takes years. A new governor may get elected. They go back and go, well, we don't really need to do this. We have other bigger priorities that I ran my campaign on.
That was Kathy's project.
Exactly. Yeah. And I've asked Carlo he's been on the show, and we spoke about that, about the continuity.
Yeah.
That the political continuity is not there, but there's still the need that the multiple dwelling law needs to be looked at if you're going to do residential to office conversions.
Yes.
There's certain aspects of the new code. Well, finally, we just did a newsletter that we're finally getting close to getting a brand new existing building code.
Yeah.
We've been using the 1968 building code for the architectural portion. We've updated the structural, the mechanical, the energy. The 1968, 2025.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It's been a while, right? So when we look at these things, we realize that nothing goes quickly.
Right.
But there is change. But the politics of it, because obviously we don't really talk politics on my show, but the politics of administrations either speeds it up or slows it down. And it's not on purpose. It's just the way it works.
Well, it's interesting you raise a point. It puts the onus really on you and I and the folks that we work with. The city of Yes, because we did a lot of work trying to advocate for it getting passed and that sort of thing. we got a lot of questions afterwards. Is this going to fix the housing problem? And it's like no one thing, even as big as the city of Yes was, is going to fix this housing
No,
problem.
what the city of Yes gives us is flexibility.
Yeah, but it's on us to make as good a use of that tool as quickly as possible, so that the political side of things, they look and go, oh, we should do that again, because that really worked.
Right.
Like if we all just sit back and be like, we'll look at a few R6s that we weren't looking at before December. No, it's like you really, there's a door open here. We got to
That is such a great point, and I think we can end the show on that, because I want to take something away from the New York City Building Congress breakfast this morning. Dan spoke about when he was at City Council, and he said city planning would come and say, hey, we're going to roll this. We want you to review this zoning. You have a half hour. You can vote yes or no. And he said he knew nothing about zoning, right? He was a public servant. And he said he would open it and read it and go, a half hour? You need to give me like at least 24 hours just to understand the language that
and
you're
an
writing.
associate's degree in urban planning.
Right,
Yeah.
because the city council member, and he was as honest as he could. He goes, now I'm on the other side of it, and we're rolling this all out. And my job is to go to the city council member and explain to them what we're trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
If you're trying to figure it out, like people say, oh, can you recap all the city of Yes? And we say, well, if you give me a block and lot, I can help you. They go, well, what do you mean? I'm like, no, City of Yes is not about this global change that says, okay, anywhere in New York City, you can build a building that's 100 feet tall. It's about your lot and where you are in reference to a million different things. But the City of Yes has given you the ability for you to look at that particular zoning lot and decide if it can be if there is an advantage to you to convert your garage to an apartment. Is it advantage to put 2 stories on your building? Right. But it's not this, cookie cutter thing that we don't need Brian anymore to be an architect, and we don't need design to help us with a zoning study.
10-story buildings across the board.
Across the board, everybody gets it. Yeah. That's not the way it is. So I agree. I am in full agreement with you, and thank you for bringing that point up, is that it is on us as architects, as zoning consultants, as developers to find that gold in the City of Yes.
And it's there.
And it's there.
Yeah.
It really is. So before we go, tell me a little bit about what you teach at Columbia.
Sure.
I love to hear about. I love the fabric of New York City. I'm went to City College in New York, graduate. Still work for a lot of some of my professors are quite elderly, but they're still practicing, right? And one of the greatest benefits of going to school in New York City, living in it, being brought up in it, is that people like Brian teach the college students about architecture, about development in New York City, and yet they're still practicing.
Yes. Yeah.
So I love that. So tell us a little bit about that, and we'll end the show there.
So Columbia is the Graduate School of Architectural Planning and Preservation. Also has an historic preservation component, and it also has a real estate development component.
Correct.
And the benefit of that program is that everyone kind of cross-pollinates. So you've got architects, you got planners, you got developers, all in the same building, and in many cases taking all the same classes.
Sounds like an amazing place.
It's great. It's a laboratory. You've got a lot of really bright graduate students there. So the class that I typically teach it's actually a mini RFP. So the students will come in, we'll put them in groups, and usually we've got planners, architects, and developers, and we'll kind of put them in mini teams, and then they will respond to an RFP.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and what's good about it is like all the heavy lifting as a teacher is done because HPD already wrote it, or HDC wrote it, or the state. But you get the students to see how the pro forma, right? The underwriting influences what the building
design,
looks like,
right.
and what
We
the
talked
building.
about that before.
Yeah, what the building looks like, how that influences the population that's going to be living there, and the community facility that you're going to be providing there.
Correct.
And then it comes all the way back around. So it creates this giant
and then they
loop.
get to see,
Right.
like we said before, when you were on the public side, you'd get to see 5 or 6 different visions of what could be on the site, and now the students are giving that back to you.
Yeah, yeah. And
So how many of their ideas do you take?
not that many.
I'm teasing you.
But I will say, so it's interesting. It's never, and I've had some really great students that have become folks that we've worked for
Sure.
and folks that we've worked with, I've been doing this long enough that it's hard for me to go to a Shinny conference or a nice AFA conference and not have 2 or 3 students like,
say, "Hey, how you
hey,
doing,
I'm doing this now." It's, they're now the
I'm
competition.
in the world. Yeah, I'm in the world.
But it's never about one team of students never get the whole thing, right?
Because they're new at it.
Yeah, right. But you'll see somebody underwrite in a certain way. You're like, oh, that's really smart. You use that funding source over here. Usually we use it somewhere else. Or you'll see
great.
somebody come up with a massing strategy that it's like, yeah, I hadn't really thought about that before. But the other thing that we have them do is we have them recognize the limitations, as we were saying. What makes affordable housing so hard? We didn't even get into regulations and codes and that sort of thing, but they get their feet wet there. And then the kind of the conceit is you get to break a rule, but you got to know what rule you're breaking and why you're breaking it, and show us how your project
And advocate for it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
And folks at HBD and NYCHA have been super generous with their time. They'll come to like the final review,
awesome.
and it's a lot of fun.
Well, if you ever do any part of it related to code and zoning, I'll love to come in and talk to them.
We'll have you come talk. It'd be
Absolutely.
great. Yeah.
We'll leave on a funny story. So a client of ours we've done work with, RKTMB,
Sure.
right? Carmi B was my professor when I was in college.
I think he was everybody's professor at some
City.
point. Yeah.
And this conversation came up the other day because we're doing a NYCHA project with them, and the job's been stalled and started. And, typical.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, funding and couldn't get the money. But Peter, who's one of the partners there, says, "Hey, sister, do you remember Carmi B?" I said, "Remember Carmi B?" I said, he's. He still comes to work a couple of days a week. I said,
Yep.
God bless him. He goes, you went to City College, right? I said, yeah, he was my professor. I go, well, let me give you a little funny story, and we'll end today's show about professors. I said, yeah, I remember working for weeks and weeks, putting my design up, pinning it up on the wall for my crit, and he'd come and say, oh, I don't like this. This is no good. This is no good. I used to go, man, I just broke my hiney for 2 weeks doing this, and he doesn't like it. So fast forward, when I was a junior in college, I actually started Design 2147.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and there was a gentleman who worked for Carmi. His name was Mike DeLuna. We went to college together,
Okay.
and he's an expedited code consultant. But at times, he would do some stuff, and I did some stuff. And as the years went on and design got bigger and we did more, our KTMB came to us and said, we want you to do some projects for us. And I remember that Carmi B sends me some drawings, and he goes, hey, sister, what do you think about this egress? And I go, Carmi, I've been waiting a long time to talk to you about getting this red pen out. He goes, is this revenge? I go, no. but that's
Comeuppance maybe, but not revenge.
But he always used to say, Norval White, who wrote the AIA Guide to New York City, used to always say that, always remember that being an architect in New York City, it's a very incestuous business. You're going to run into all these people somewhere in your career for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And he was right.
Yeah.
But it was an absolute pleasure to have you on, Brian.
Likewise.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for the invitation.
affordable world is very dear to me. I think you do it because you love architecture, but you also love the final product of it. So kudos to everybody at M.A.P. You're all great people. I've been there before. I come in and I chat once in a while about the new codes and things that are coming out. So keep up all the great work. and pleasure to have you.
Yeah, thanks so much.